Hey, what is going on, Miami Dolphins fans? Welcome back to the Fins Up Network. It's Ben Morgan, and we are wrapping up Ravens week with my final preview and predictions video. So, just like last week, gathered some viewer questions that relate to the Dolphins and Ravens game on Sunday. So, since I got quite a few good ones to get through before giving my final score prediction, I want to jump right into them. But real quick, before we get started, let's hear your final score predictions as well. Between the Dolphins and Ravens on Sunday, week 2 action, drop those in the comments. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you are getting subscribed. I think we are getting pretty damn close to 2,000. So let's get there sooner rather than later. But like I said, let's jump into some of those questions before I get to my actual prediction for the game. Question number 1. Could we see Kader Kohou start on the boundary while moving Nick Needham back to the slot? Because, yes, I would love nothing more than Nick Needham back in the slot. But to be honest, I'm going to answer no. And the biggest reason I'm going to say no is due to the small sample size we currently have from Kader Kohou. I do think we're going to see an uptick in snaps, in the number of snaps that he played. He played 18 last week against the Patriots. But I think right now experience just wins out. They roll with Nick Needham while mixing in Kohou, Cross, and Elijah Campbell throughout the game. But hey, hell of a week 1 for Kader Kohou. Let's back it up in week 2. Number 2 question. Any chance Erik Ezukanma gets a few snaps? So I'm recording this on Friday evening. It's going to be released Saturday morning. And I think I've got to leave this question a little bit open-ended for the time being, because if they don't elevate River Craycraft to the game, just like they did last week, I don't think Erik Ezukanma will be a healthy scratch in week 2, and therefore could definitely see some action. Trent Sherfield is actually listed on the final injury report as being questionable, so keep an eye on that as well. But if River Craycraft gets elevated again and they keep Sherfield active as well, it's likely that Ezukanma would be the one scratched on game day in the event they make a wide receiver inactive. So I think we'll probably get the actual answer to that at some point on Saturday, today when I'm releasing this, if we see any practice squad guys that are elevated to the roster for Sunday. So let's go on to the next one. How do you see the offensive line playing out given the injuries? Because, man, we have been bitten by the injury bug already, and it's only week 2. And Friday, we learned Austin Jackson was placed on the short-term IR, so he's definitely out. And Mike McDaniel said that Greg Little would fill in at right tackle while Austin Jackson is out. So that would mean left to right, you've got Armstead, Eichenberg, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, Greg Little. And the only way I see that changing is if Armstead ends up being a no-go for Sunday. He is currently listed as questionable. So that's when the more drastic changes would take place, and we'd likely see from left to right Greg Little, Liam Eichenberg, Connor Williams, Robert Jones, and then Robert Hunt playing right tackle. Because that's what the team rolled with when both Armstead and Austin Jackson were out at the same time in week 1. I don't think that they would stray away from that plan. So I think that's what you would see if Terron Armstead was out. Let's jump into the next question. Which player position will you be watching closely during the game? And I absolutely love this question, since I am a bit of a believer that you miss some really good key aspects of the game if you get caught watching the ball 100% of the time. So I'm actually going to give 2 answers to this, one offense and one defense. So let's go offensively first. So assuming Terron Armstead does start at left tackle, my offensive focus is going to be on the player right next to him, Liam Eichenberg. Because, man, we really need him to take a step forward this season. So I want to see him and Terron Armstead work together, keep that side of the pocket clean for Tua. How do they play together with stunts? And how do they play together with twists? How can they keep the pocket clean, and can they get some push in the running game? So offensively, I want to watch our young left guard, Liam Eichenberg. And honestly, I'm going to cheat with my defensive answer, because pre-snap, I'm going to be watching the defensive backs. I want to see who is out on the field. I want to see where they are lining up. And then once I've kind of processed all of that to see who's out there, I'm going to be watching the edge. That's my favorite position to watch. And more than anything, most likely Jaylen Phillips when he is out there. Now, I will say with this caveat that that's going to be a little bit tricky potentially this week if we go back to running a bunch of the zero blitz, because then you're definitely going to want to watch who's coming as that free rusher, because that's where the action is. But in a standard four-man rush, I want to see Jaylen Phillips get some wins this week after getting stonewalled in a pretty quiet week one. Let's jump into the next one here. If the Dolphins win, who do you think will be the player of the game? And I honestly think, kind of depending on the flow of the game, how it's going, I think Mike McDaniel could give Tua Tagovailoa the opportunity to just shine and sort of silence the critics a little bit. And you know what? Last week of preseason, when they played the Eagles, he basically let Tua and Tyreek come out and do this in that final preseason game. And now we're back to what kind of where we were. We can't stop hearing about the arm strength again. And that quote that he said about not being able to see wide receivers because he's a shorter quarterback, that basically got taken to the extreme, taken out of context. We're back to kind of where we were before the season started. So part of me thinks Mike McDaniel may go out of his way to kind of nip this negative talk early in the season. And if he can dial up and connect on some deep balls and some mid-range passes, and if we can just see an overall better flow to the offense in general, not only will Miami win this game, but the ridiculous circus that just surrounding Tua on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis may just happen to quiet down a little bit and just let this team focus on football. So, you know what? Maybe at the end of the day, that's just me thinking and hoping out loud, but Mike McDaniel just kind of comes off and seems like that type of coach that would just simply kind of like to stick it to people so that he can just get back to winning football games and having that be the team's biggest priority rather than just playing these stupid media games on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. Let's jump into the next question. Should the Miami Dolphins panic if they lose to the Ravens? So I actually have to say no to this one. I mean, think about this. They're a road dog based on the Las Vegas point spread. They already have one win in this kind of first 4-game stretch start of the season where a lot of us, me included, in the preseason said, I'd be pretty damn happy if the Dolphins got out to a 1-1, to a 2-2 start to the season. And kind of as like the full, like, so the full length version of this question, I kind of shortened it up for video purposes. Baltimore historically just has Miami's number. If you look it up, the point differential over the last like 10 times they've played, it is a depressing number. You shouldn't look it up. Actually, don't do that. It'll ruin your evening, ruin your morning, whenever you're watching this. We legit just have not played them remotely close up until the win that we had last year. So while I think Miami can definitely win this game, and as you'll see in a minute here, spoiler alert, in my final prediction, I think they should win this game. I can't really call this game a must win or anything like that. And also, I do want to apologize as I know I did not get to all of the questions that were asked this week. We got a pile that came in. I try really hard to cram as much information into these videos while keeping them relatively short. But please, by all means, keep firing those questions away. I promise at some point I will get to them. But right now, it's time to jump into that final score prediction. And there it is. I got the Miami Dolphins getting the win, 24-17. So here's my quick breakdown on that. I went all week telling myself that I wasn't going to stray away from my preseason prediction where I had Miami going 1-1 through the first 2 weeks. I had a win against New England. I had a loss to Baltimore. But given how much the Baltimore Ravens are just dinged up right now, cornerbacks alone, Marlon Humphrey is questionable. Marcus Peters is questionable. Kyle Fuller is on IR. He is out of the equation. Ronnie Stanley, who they thought maybe would be back this week, doubtful. So I'm going to give Miami the slight edge here in this run game. And talking about injuries, don't get me wrong. Miami, they have their fair share. Austin Jackson, short-term IR. Terron Armstead's questionable. Byron Jones is on the PUP. 3 starters, 3 impact players. But I think as long as Terron Armstead plays and can stay healthy throughout the game, we can survive with Greg Little at right tackle. There is a big difference between losing Terron Armstead and losing Austin Jackson, because Losing Austin or Terron Armstead, as I said earlier, that shifts things on the entire offensive line. Losing Austin Jackson means Greg Little is plug and play. And you're not going to find too many people that would say that there's really a huge downgrade between those two players in regards to player production. So put it this way, Greg Little starting for Austin Jackson isn't shifting the Vegas point spread one way or another. Simply put that way. So honestly, I think that if Miami can keep Tua protected, give him that little extra time to be productive, push that ball downfield to Waddle and Tyreek, I think we can see this offense open up a little bit. And when it does, it's just going to create more room, more opportunities for the running backs, for the run game as well, because Baltimore is not just going to be able to stack and load the box and just play up front and make Miami beat them that way. And then you look defensively real quick. Josh Boyer had a plan last year that worked essentially to perfection. And I think he's going to make kind of a few alterations to that plan this year. That's going to kind of be similar to what we saw, but the alterations can help confuse Lamar Jackson and that Ravens offense to the point where I don't see us really getting into a back and forth shootout with this. I honestly think that if you can keep the Ravens to 24 points or less, I really, really, really like our chances. But that is what I've got for my final score prediction for Dolphins Ravens. But let's hear yours in the comments below. Drop them. Let's get a win on Sunday. I will be back Sunday following the game, giving my post-game recap and takeaway. So we will see you all again then. But until then, Miami Dolphins fans, enjoy the game. Let's get a win and fins up.